Buckle up, buckaroo.
Grab onto your hats and glasses, folks. We're about to get into the Linux user space. Too much? Okay. Well, let's try it again.
All we need is just to start.
That's where I can blame Joe.
Blame
We're
Joe.
going to do that anyway.
We're going to blame Joe anyway.
Blame Joe.
Coming up in episode 1 of Linux User Space, we're going to cover a mini spotlight for all of the hosts. We're going to talk about popOS. We're going to report on end-of-life support for 1910. And we're going to end with some Linux hardware. Welcome to the Linux User Space. Hello and welcome to the Linux User Space. I'm Rocco.
I'm Joe.
I'm Leo.
And I'm Dan.
And there is absolutely no pressure on this first episode, is there?
No pressure. No pressure at all.
None.
So we came up with a great title for this episode, which is I Blame Joe. And
What?
that's pretty much been our motto since we started.
I blame Joe too.
Everything that has gone wrong, it's definitely been Joe's fault.
It's definitely been Joe. So we're just going to tell a story on how this podcast started. Joe messaged me on Telegram and basically asked, if I wanted to talk about a podcast. And I messaged back and I says, yeah, I'm busy, but we can talk about it sometime. And Joe, you had some weird reaction to that.
Yeah. Typically, if you ask somebody, hey, I've got this idea. I'm so excited about it. What do you think? And they're like, I'm busy. Get away. I didn't cry long, but there was definitely some tears that I had to dampen. But then you responded back and you were like, I'm short on time right now. And I was like, oh, that's so much better than the other thing. So, I just kind of laid it out for you. One of the things that I was really missing was Choose Linux and podcasts that kind of focused on the desktop and things like that. And you echoed those same sentiments. You thought, I missed that one too. So that was it. It was one of those, I was literally driving down the road to Walmart to go shopping for my parents, and I had an idea. And when I stopped, I started firing it off in the Telegram.
Well, when you mentioned this to me and you mentioned Choose Linux, I was completely on board because that was one of my favorite podcasts because it concentrated on the desktop. And I was like, yeah, there is no other podcast out there that specifically focuses on just the desktop. And it was born. And then we decided that we needed some help. And we called upon Dan. And Dan, what did you think when we first asked you?
Well, after I got my arm untangled from behind me, I was really on board with that. I thought it was a great idea. I love that podcast too. And I like exploring different desktops and different Linux distributions. So yeah, it didn't take a lot of convincing, but yeah, you won me over.
So we get Dan involved and we're all talking about it. And, we could do the podcast with 3 guys. So that's not a problem. But I'm thinking to myself, if we had 4, is that an option? If we had 4, that'd be great, right? And I know the perfect guy that could join us for that 4th. And Leo, you were that guy.
So this was kind of a shock, right? So, I'm cooking dinner, I think it was. And then I get this email, hey, you got a minute for a Zoom session? And I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? And I'm like, this is either really, really good or you're kicking me off Biddle forever. One of the two. I didn't know what it was.
We're going to talk about Biddle in a few, if you just hang out for a little bit, Leo.
Yeah. So I come in and I'm like, oh, these guys are all from Biddle. This is a Biddle thing. It's an intervention. I don't know what this is. So and then you guys come out with the hey, so do you want to join the show? And I'm like, a show? Okay. So, and this is what I do. You gave me this story. You described what this was all about. And I mean, this is right up my alley. I love the Linux desktop. This is where I'm at 90% of the time. When I have to reboot to something else, I do that. But, I love being on the desktop. And this is a podcast about the desktop. So yeah, I was all in. You told me that, and I'm 100% on board with this.
Well, we decided not to take Joe Resington's advice and create another podcast, and we did. But I think that we need to find out a little information about each one of you guys and your history and who you are, because there's going to be people that don't know you. So, Joe, let's start with you. Where did you start in Linux, and when was that?
Linux was an interesting start for me. I had got a call from my brother. I was struggling. My dad was struggling with his PC. And he said, you should, I heard about this Linux thing. This is about 2005, 2006. And I go, really? And he goes, yeah, it's called Ubuntu. And I'm like, what? It's called what? And I don't know how many times I asked him to say it. But he goes, yeah. It's like this free open source software. You should check it out, man. I heard great things. I go, are you running it? He's like, oh, no, I'm not running it, but you should check it out. So I did download it, checked it out, loaded it on my dad's computer, told my dad, read up on it a little bit. I said, everything's going to be good, Dad. I'm going to set it up to where you can do Windows side by side with it. So it'll be fine. He goes, okay, good. So I loaded it up, booted into it. He goes, I hate it. And I go, oh, well, that's, no problem. We're going to go back to Windows. So reboot, gone. Just no
Wow.
Windows at all. I had wiped the whole disk. So that was my first entrance into the Linux user space, I should say. And from then on, I was really intrigued by Linux. I thought, man, there's all these people, trying to wrap your head around kind of how Linux works at first. It takes a while because I just came from Windows and Mac. I did a lot of work in the education industry with as far as the technology. So we installed data infrastructure and data networking, and then we did a lot of audio video distribution, things like that. So you're in a school district, you're working on Windows, and then every now and then you get annoyed because you come across somebody's G3 Mac and you just can't figure out how to do anything, and there's no right mouse button, and it was just anyways. So anyways, I just kept tabs on it, and I just would follow it around every now and then. I go, hey, you see a news article, check it out, install. And then finally took probably another 8-9 years before I actually said, okay, I'm going to get into Linux. I'm going to run this as a daily driver. I'm going to not buy another Windows PC. I'm going to do it this way. And since then, I just, the variety of Linux, especially the Linux desktop, it just sucked me in. The fact that I could go, you don't like GNOME? All right, cool. I'm going to go to KDE. You don't like this? I'm going to go to Mate. You don't like that? I'm going to, LXQT, whatever it was. I tried out every single one that I could get my hands on. And that was doing pretty well with, I think I had a 2 meg DSL connection at the time. So the ISOs took a bit to download. But that was my journey in, and I've just never looked back and just love it.
Well, you mentioned that you were on Windows and you just decided you were going to try, or you were just going to jump right into Ubuntu. Was there a tipping point in Windows?
Yeah, there was. So Windows 8 drove me insane. I just couldn't, what did they call it? Metro? I forget what it was.
Metro.
Yeah, it just blew my mind that it was this frustrating to work with, and they rolled it just like, here you go, here's Windows. And 7, I had 7. I mean, they had their missteps along the way. I'm reminded of ME and a few of the others, but XP and 7 were, I don't know, they were pretty solid, and you had your issues, but who doesn't, and all that. But yeah, 8 drove me to Mac, I'll say. And then when I got on the Mac, I thought, this is just way too limiting. Let me really give Linux an honest hard look. And that's when that was kind of my tipping point. Windows 8, Microsoft, you drove me to Linux.
I never got it. I never got the Windows 8 hate. I mean, it was still Windows, but I think maybe it was just the fact that I had the super key figured out by Windows 7 or so.
Yeah.
It didn't bother me because you could just smack the super key and type what you wanted. So I don't know. I never got the Windows 8 thing.
If I went back to it now, I think it'd be better. But at the time, it was too jarring.
Yeah, and I brought those same skills over to Linux, man. Everything, you can still super key and search. So I actually never really had to learn a whole new paradigm except for this GNOME thing.
Well, you mentioned jarring, and I think that's exactly it. There was a lot of people that it just was so different from Windows 7 that there was just, people are resistant to change the way it is.
Yeah. And it was really weird because I like new things. I embraced it, actually. I did. I tried. I was like, yep, hey, you know what's good for me, Microsoft. Give it to me. So I installed it. I embraced it, but I just kept hitting just wall after wall. And then I manage our systems at our office, and everybody was it was the bane of my existence. My phone just, where's my start button? I can't click on how do I get out of this menu? I can't escape the menu. It was just a lot of things, and it was jarring for a lot of people, and it just created a lot of work for me.
Speaking of Windows Me, you go back to that whole paradigm with just drag all the icons to the desktop and don't even let them call you.
Right. Yeah, just double click on this. It's right here.
Yeah, and then the desktop's all filled up.
Yeah.
So fast forward to today. What distro did you finally land on for your main machine?
So I will say early on, I jumped into all of the ones that they say to try. Mint, I was on Mint early. Mate, Ubuntu Mate. But I was listening to Chris Fisher a few years back, and he talked about popOS System 76, and I thought, you know what, let me just check this out. And ever since, was it 1710, I think was when popOS, at the time it was probably more theming than anything, but it just something sucked me into it, which is interesting because GNOME, the way GNOME works in the menu system is, you think of Windows 8 and how it was just, I'm a super key type, get what I need now, but back then I just wasn't. But popOS just sucked me in. And I have consistently for the last close to 3 years now tried every new release of every distro. If it's out there, if you could see the boot partitions on my devices, you'd cry. I've tried them all, and I always come back to Pop. I just love how it feels. It feels like home to me. It feels very natural. It's the only distro I put on. I never touch the theming. I love the theme. It's got a good feel to it. And I sort of just short of being able to say I just love it. It's that. It just feels right every time I load it up. All right, Leo, been listening to you for a little while. You do some work out there?
I sure do.
What got you into Linux, Leo?
Ooh, so back in, I guess it was probably around 2002, I had an instructor or a teacher at my high school that had conscripted me to do some Windows work for him, reinstalling Windows 98 SE. And he knew my knack. He knew if he said the word computer, I was there. So yeah, he said the word computer and I was there. So that was most of it. And I think he had this idea the entire time, but eventually he got to the point where, he did one of those, hey, come here. Let me show you this. Come here, right here. And he handed me a disk. It was burned and scrawled across it was Slackware. I don't know what that was. But he told me, so there's this thing, Linux, and he kind of gave me some background on it and asked if I wanted to mess with it. And I was like, yeah, of course, it's a computer. Like, yeah, I'm just going to mess with it. Yeah, of course. So he gave me the disk, sat me down, kind of gave me a little bit of background on what I was supposed to be doing, and I went into it. So from that moment, Linux beat me. It took me something like 2 or 3 days with his help to figure out how to get this thing into an actual desktop. I don't remember if it was KDE 2 or KDE 3, but it was one of the earlier ones. And once I got it, that sense of, and Joe, you're in IT, so you know this feeling when you finally beat it, whatever that issue is just gravy.
It's interesting you use that mechanic analogy because it is. My dad's a mechanic, my older brother's a mechanic, and it is such a satisfying feeling when you've worked on something, you've built it, put it together, and you're there using it, and you're like, I did this. I've been working on this.
Turning the key in that car, and that engine runs for more than 4 seconds, right? I mean, it's just like hitting that boot key, and it actually finally boots to the OS you want it to. You know, there's obvious differences between the two things, but the sense of accomplishment, I think, is very similar between the two.
It's amazing. So, Leo, we know you from various other projects that you work on. In fact, I know I messaged Rocco the first time I actually saw you, and I go, if there was ever someone who doesn't look like they sound, it's Leo. Oh my goodness. I don't know what I was expecting, but it was not the Leo Chavez that I see in front of me today. And so I had heard you on Mintcast for a while. So what got you into podcasting in general? What was your foray into that?
It was an accident. I never, ever expected Rob to ever email me back. I figured, because he was getting tired of it, right? I mean, he had been doing it for probably close to 10 years, if not more. And he was finally just tired of it. And I heard Joe Ressington on some Linux podcast say something to the effect of, hey, the Mintcast is looking for new hosts. And I'm like, yeah, I could probably do that. I talk for a living. You know, I teach classes. I talk to these people all day long. What's 2 more hours?
How hard could it be?
I know.
Yeah.
Little did I know, there's a lot of work that goes into that, and I didn't appreciate that then. I do now. But so I just sent an email. I was like, hey, Rob, I'm interested in doing this thing that you say you don't want to do anymore. Consider me. I had said, I'm a teacher. I talk all the time, so I feel like it's a natural fit. The whole resume thing, right? Where you're in the interview and you're like,
you got
totally.
pedigree. Yeah.
Yeah. But again, I just never expected an email back. I think it was less than a day. He said, hey, we're having a meeting on Saturday. Why don't you come in? There are a couple other people that wanted to be on the show. Brought in, it was Rob, it was Isaac who was still on the show, and then it turned out to be like 5 other people. The very first thing he said to all of us was, I did not expect this many people to show up. I expected 1, and then maybe another down the road or something like that, but I did not expect this. So anyway, and then the second thing that he told us was, you folks, all of you, are not all going to be here at the end of this. Like, in a couple of months, you'll all drop off. You know how many dropped off? 1. There is 7 of us on that show right now. We're not always on the same shows, but there's a roster of 7. And so just one of those things that I just couldn't believe it. And then it turns out that, now we're just a big, huge band of Linux geeks that like to come together and talk about random Linux stuff all the time. And specifically Linux Mint, obviously, because it's Mintcast. But some weeks, nothing happens in the Mint world. So we just get to talk about whatever. And then Tony Hughes said, hey, there's this thing that a guy named Rocco does called Biddle. Why don't you come on? And I'm like, this was, it took him probably 3 or 4 asks for me to go ahead and do it. And I was like, all right, fine. I got a free Saturday. Why not? So I jumped on. And I think that very first episode I was fairly quiet. Maybe not. Probably not. Honestly, me, no. But there was one episode where I didn't say much. It may not have been that first one. And then after the camera stops rolling and it's just, banter at the end, it sucked me in. I was like, this is a really good place to be. So I try to be there as much as I can. And that has obviously rolled into now this. So, I appreciate you guys asking. It was a shock, and I'm glad to be here now. So Dan, now here's the deal. You were number 3 in the ask for coming onto the show. So, and it turns out you're number 3 right now. So you got to tell me, because I actually really do not know, where did this Linux thing start? Where did you come from?
All right. So I've been into computers and computing and technology for a very long time. Probably started messing with computers in the early 80s. I don't know. I was probably in middle school, maybe high school, not sure, doing computer shopping at some store somewhere. I see this Red Hat box, glaring me in the eye on the shelf. And I'm like, what is this thing? Because I was always into the alternative. Whatever is different, I want to try it. I want to see what I can do. I want to see how I can customize it. I want to see what's out there. So I pull the box, bring it home, rush it on, and yeah, it was rough. Those early days back in the mid 90s, they were tough. But it came with a book, came with a CD. I learned some stuff, and back then it was all dial up. It wasn't, you weren't constantly connected to the internet. So anytime you had to go look something up, you were like, hurry up, gotta get up my research in order so I can, figure out what I need and want to do. And at one point I did end up, compiling my own kernel, because the PC that I put it on, it didn't have any audio support for whatever reason. It wasn't it wasn't compiled into the kernel. So I found out how to do that, and I got my audio working, and I got everything working, and I even learned some stuff there. But I did put it down for a little while because application support wasn't there. I could do basic stuff, but there was other applications I was needing for school and stuff like that. So I wasn't able to do that. So I put it down for a little while, went back to Windows, whatever. But then I really went to it full time, probably around 2010, somewhere around there. And I had tried various different things throughout the years, and nothing permanent though. But 2010, I got a machine here at home, and I didn't have any. It didn't have a hard drive, so I put a new hard drive in it, and I was like, I don't have a Windows license. What am I going to do? I'll throw Linux on it. So I did. And it just stuck. It just is stuck with me. And I found I was able to do more things than I was before. So I was super happy about that. And I was able to get by. All the basics were there. So that's how I started.
So where did you end up landing? You're on a distro, right? You've got to be on one every single day, and it boots up to the same thing. So what does it boot up to?
It does. It boots up to Ubuntu. All right. So
Wait. I thought you said you loved the idea of choice.
I do love the idea of choice.
Oh, never. Okay.
Every choice but customization, right?
Yeah.
No. It's great. There is enough. So I like it simple. I'm a simple person. I like it simple. I like the simple menu. I like it just out of my way for the most part. I don't need a tiling window manager. I don't need to go that simple, but I want to keep it pretty minimal. And so yeah, I do. And I also work on the project. I started, really loving it probably, when they switched to LXQ. So 1810, it really won me over. I actually had an old laptop that I had 1804 on. That was the last LXDE. And I was just trying to revive some life into it. And then they came out with LXQ, and I'm like, wow, that looks much more modern. It's still simple. And it does have some customization, Joe. Nice try.
I've got the same feeling about Linux Mint, which is, it has typically been my home for the past couple of years. And that's it. I mean, there's a simplicity to it that, I don't need the flashy. I love my wobbly windows. I mean, that's my pedigree, but, you don't need it to get your work done. And when you're trying to, record a show or edit some video or something like that, you just want it to work, and it doesn't matter whether or not the windows fade.
Exactly. So Rocco, I know you're not the most open person about, how you got your start, maybe, or just talking about yourself anyway. So how did you get your start into Linux?
Well, I sat down and thought about it the one day, and I didn't really remember all of the details. But doing the Linux Spotlight, it jogs your memory of other people telling their story. And, the one Linux Spotlight was with Dave, Dreaming Wolf. And, he had mentioned that he had heard about Ubuntu on the Overclocker forums. And, it just like dinged in my head. Yet that's exactly where I had heard about Ubuntu and Linux. So I ended up trying it and then didn't stick with it because it was so different. And I don't want to say I was a power user in Windows, but I did mess up the registry entry so many times that I had to reinstall Windows multiple times. So I was into trying new things. Well, it didn't work. Waited a little while, a couple of years, I guess, and then I went back to it. Got it installed using the Wilby installer, actually. I got into the desktop and I was like, this is great, but I can't get to my files. I don't have my pictures. I don't have my documents. I don't even know how to get to them. Like, I don't know how to get them from the Windows partition over to the Linux partition. And, I was like, meh. So I waited. One day I finally got it and just, I guess, fell in love with the fact that I could customize it. So during that transition period, I was on Windows and I was trying all these things to customize Windows, which was basically nothing. I mean, you had to purchase window blinds or something to that effect to change anything. Well, and that's what drew me back to Linux. And I started out somewhere in KDE 3.5 days and loved it. And then they kind of like went on to KDE 4, Plasma 4. So that started my journey on trying all of these other distros and other desktop environments. And today I'm running popOS. So there you have that.
Nice. So whatever made you get into podcasting and, having shows where people were joining and telling their story, whatever made you get started on that?
Well, I was running KDE at the time, and YouTube was around and there were Linux videos, but there was hardly any information or video information, I should say, on KDE Plasma. So it has a billion settings in Plasma 5, and there's no information on what these settings do. There's no one-stop shop for that. So I figured, well, there's nothing I can do about it. I can't do that. Well, my dad had said to me, well, why don't you just start making videos and show people what you know? And I'm like, well, I don't know everything. Like, I don't know what all of these settings do. Well, you don't need to know everything. He says, you just tell them what you know. And that's where the YouTube channel started. So I started with a KDE customization series of videos, and they were very raw and terrible and probably not good today if you went back and looked at them. But that's where I started in YouTube. And then back in December of 2016, I think it was, I was talking to Rob Collins and he said, well, you want to join me on a YouTube video and we'll talk about Linux? And I said, yeah, that's great. That's where Destination Linux started. And then I ended up doing live streams. The idea was to do a live stream, to pick a distro, install it, and do the live stream from that distro as I'm checking it out. Well, that doesn't work out too well, especially when it's got bugs and you got crashes and you got errors and people can't see the video anymore. And so that whole biddle started as a live stream of me just live streaming a distro and then failing and then saying, there's people in the chat. I said, well, you guys can come on and talk if you want. And I think Joe Panica was one of the first guys that came on, and there was a couple others. Colin was there. And then we just decided to make it a regular thing every week. It was Friday Night Live, I think it was called, when we officially made it a talk within the community. And it's changed over the years and got different times and everything else to the point it is today, where we do it every week. It's called Biddle, and I love it.
I love being there.
Yep. Well, all of you guys are on there, and I appreciate you guys being there. So
it's a fun time. I mean, I wouldn't, if I can't, I wouldn't miss it.
Yeah, it is a good time.
Well, that is the story of how the podcast started. That is who we are. And there you go.
All right, guys. So we've been playing around with popOS 2004 LTS for the last couple weeks. I thought we'd start by just giving a little bit of history lesson. What is popOS? Why does it exist? Where does it come from? And hopefully by the end of this, we'll have an idea where it's going. So popOS started by a company, System 76. We're all familiar with them. They make some laptops, some really cool stuff. They've been making laptops since about 2005. And up until 2017, Ubuntu proper was their go-to distro of choice that they loaded on every device there. Well, what happens in 2017? Anyone?
Goodbye, Unity.
Right. Unity goes away, and Pop immediately starts working on popOS 17.10 and developing their own version of GNOME. And at this point, 17.10, it feels a little more like a themed version of GNOME. Not a whole lot of extra utility added in, but it's the base of what they're going to be working on. And interestingly enough, to my knowledge, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe System 76 and popOS is the only hardware manufacturer that's developing their own distro. I mean, you could maybe say Raspian for Raspberry Pis or Raspberry Pi OS, whatever, but I think they're pretty unique in the fact that they are marrying the Linux software, with the hardware and working on utilities to make that work well together.
Yep, they are.
Yeah, so some of the basic distro details that are involved, it's based on Ubuntu, and the desktop environment's pretty much a heavily themed GNOME shell. You can tell that pretty quick as you fire it up and start getting into the menus and things like that. The the file manager, they use Nautilus, apt for package management. It's a GTK base, and they're using systemd. Who isn't? The Pop Shop, which is pretty unique. It's actually a fork or a derivative of Elementary OS, which I think is pretty fascinating because isn't the App Center a derivative of Ubuntu's Software Center as well? So kind of a derivative of a derivative, if I'm not mistaken.
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
Right?
Very open source model.
Right. The Display Manager, GDM, which is based on GNOME, and X. By default, you can use Wayland if you like, but again, doesn't work with dedicated graphics cards to this point. So that's a little history. It brings us to the current release, popOS 2004 LTS. So they made a number of advancements in this version that came out. Obviously, it's built on Ubuntu, so all the advancements that came with Ubuntu also were brought into Pop as well. But one key feature that I know we've all kind of played with is their auto tiling. And that has been pretty neat to have an extension, basically, that enables auto tiling by default. Any thoughts on that so far? You guys have been playing with that.
I'm really starting to find my groove, I think, with the tiling. I think, it's only been a couple of weeks. So a couple of more weeks, and I could really, really get used to that.
Yeah, I think I need more time. I was coming off of maybe a couple of weeks ago playing around with Regolith and i3, and so I really started to get the muscle memory down for how to smash windows into the side or the corner or whatever. And yeah, when you turn on tiling, so I had to picture this, right? I had like 8 different windows up on my screen, and I'm like, you know what I need right now? Tiles. I really want to be able to get at everything. I flipped it on. Everything just, I don't know where anything went. And things were so tiny, squished off into the corner. It was tough. I think I need more time with it. But I mean, as far as if you just have a couple of windows going on and you pop a new one open or something like that, it's pretty intuitive. But yeah, just don't turn it on when you got like 8 or 10 windows on the screen. It'll blow your mind.
But I think I was able to use the extra workspaces in addition to that. So I could flip the workspaces and still have the beauty behind having 2, 3, 4 windows tiled in each workspace and flipping the workspaces along with flipping through the tiles. That's where it took a couple of weeks and a couple more weeks, and I could really be a lot more proficient. Yeah,
this is where I'm also trying to get onto the whole workspaces horse as well. I started to do it. GNOME makes it actually really easy to understand how workspaces work, because when you smack that super key, your workspaces are off to your side and you can see what's on them. That, I think, is probably the biggest thing that has allowed me to understand how workspaces work, and the fact that you can drag windows just from that list of stuff right onto one of those workspaces. That has eased me into it. And I think the marriage of those two things is really what's going to push me over the edge to really start doing the tiling in Pop.
Yeah, really cool. Another avenue that they've added or worked on is their application switcher and launcher. So we all know, Super Tab, you can start tabbing through your different software pieces, but Super / they worked on this time, and it's actually a pretty powerful launcher, which I don't remember it in the past. Maybe I just didn't use it, but I started messing around with that this week. Really cool being able to not just switch between your open apps, but you can start typing just like hitting the super key. You can launch an app, or you can switch to that app. So just a little more nuances that they add on top of what's already there. A big change was the Flatpak support, FlatHub out of the box. So we know that's been a topic for conversation in a lot of circles lately for different reasons. But Pop has done it in such a way that they've integrated it into the Pop shop. You can go and look, is there a Deb? Is there a Flatpak? And you just pick the one you want. Or if they're only available in either or, you take what you get. So really cool that that's already integrated. If Flatpak's your thing, Flatpak's not your thing, then you got to do like I do and just add snaps and live life.
Does that get integrated into the Pop shop as well?
The snaps?
Yeah, or do you have to do that all command line?
Yeah, command line.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
the snaps are not built into Pop shop,
Right.
but the Flatpaks are. I did check that out.
Yeah, one of the things I try to do with this is do it the way they present it. That way you really get a feel for how Pop behaves and how it's supposed to feel.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that they've done it really well with the Pop shop, selecting between the two. I think it's very smooth. I like the way they do it a lot. It's similar to the way it's done in Discover with flipping between, the snaps, Flatpaks, and Deb packages. So it's very intuitive. I think it's a good way to go.
And it tends to be the option either way, right? Because even with Ubuntu, right? If you're going to load up Ubuntu and get in the Software Center, you're going to have snaps or you're going to have Debs, right? It seems like everybody's picking a lane, and it's fine. It seems to be majority of software is available in one of those formats. You can get it. And then if you still need something, they haven't blocked you from adding it. So you can always go get a snap if you'd like and enable that. Hybrid graphics mode. So I will say Pop, one of the things that really got me on Pop early on, and I didn't recognize it right away because I didn't have a dedicated graphics card in the laptop I had at the time. But now their hybrid graphics, I want to say they were one of the first to be able to just go into your tray up there and swap between dedicated or integrated graphics. And you had to log out and log back in. But it was really neat. And they've taken that even a step further and been working on adding other features to it. Now you can go into the hybrid mode, which is really neat, where I can now right click on the app I'm going to launch and I can choose whether I want to run it with integrated graphics or whether I want to run it with the dedicated GPU on the laptop. So gives you the ability to really do some things. You want to launch Minecraft, you can launch it with the dedicated graphics card, but it doesn't, if you're not using it, you have the power savings of running on that integrated graphics card while you're not needing it, which was a really cool feature. And another thing that wasn't in the release notes, but I just noticed popped up yesterday or the day before was the compute mode. Did you guys see that?
No.
No.
So in that same power settings, now I've got integrated graphics, I've got NVIDIA graphics, I've got hybrid graphics, which is what I'm on now, and now compute graphics. So there's another mode now to where it's in compute mode, which I would guess for some pretty heavy duty number crunching or processing power that way.
Video editing, things like that.
Yeah, video editing. Yeah, things like that. So really, really cool little features, again, that just keep adding to make, it's amazing to me how I would recommend Pop for a new user, but even power users, I think, can really still get work done. And they've enabled their tools to work in both areas. The application indicators in the top bar, that was really cool. So being able to look up to the right now and see which apps you have open and gives you some menu options to select and go through them as well.
That's a big must-have for me. I personally want my application indicators where I can see them.
Yeah. Same here. I got to have them. I got to know when I get new messages, things like that. When they're hidden behind,
Right.
whatever. It's frustrating to go in and realize, I've got 54 messages. What?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to be able to minimize that so that, that's not, the application isn't always there, but I want to be able to get to it again when I can see that I have some sort of notification.
Yeah, because otherwise all you get is that little circle by the clock to tell you that you have a notification, but I'm not going to tell you which one. So yeah, Pop is really good about, here's your actual notification. It's important to me anyway.
Yeah, it's good to know when you take a day or two off of Telegram and you see, 784 million on the Telegram because everybody's been chatting away in the different groups. So yes, again, adding little areas gives you information, doesn't take over the screen, doesn't have an annoying pop-up that comes in. It's just some information that's there for you. Theme updates, dark mode by default. Dark mode all the things. I can't dark mode enough of the things. Now I don't have to go find it to turn it on. I think it's great. Their dark mode, I love. It's not too dark. It's a nice hybrid. And it plays nice with their theming and everything else. I really appreciate the way they do that. And if you want to check it out, a big shout to their website. You can actually go to their website and there's an enable dark mode button toggle that looks just like the one in the software, and you can toggle the website back and forth on and on just to kind of see how their theming
It's a nice
works
touch.
out. I mean,
really
that's some polish right there. Like just those little things of attention to detail.
One of the big things that I love about the popOS dark mode is, do you guys remember? I know that you have said that you guys were on earlier versions of Ubuntu. You remember that color scheme? You remember all that brown?
Yeah.
Pop is brown, man,
Yeah.
and it's good. It gave me that nostalgic hit right in the gut, and I was like, yeah, I like this. This is good.
Yeah, it feels warm inside.
It does. Yeah. All right. With, of course, the Ubuntu base comes some new technological advances, of course, GNOME 3.36, the new extensions app, which, again, available across the board, but I love that. The retooling, they've reorganized some of the settings throughout in 3.36, and then, of course, Linux kernel 5.4. So increased support for the 5700 XTs, the Navi 10, Navi 12, and 14 support, and then also all of the 2020 APU stuff that's coming out from AMD. They have already started that, and Mesa drivers 20.8 currently, as I last checked. I don't think it shipped with that, but that was the latest update. So sitting on 20.8. So not quite Arch level support yet on the Mesa, but it's at least good enough to where I can get some gaming on. So
I will say that kernel 5.4 was a must for me. It absolutely had to be. And that's because I'm on the 5700 XT, as you mentioned. So if I didn't have 5.4, it would have been, I would have had to do something like Uku and get a new kernel or something like that. There's better stuff in the newer kernels, but 5.4 was an absolute minimum.
yeah, that was a big moment for Ubuntu, really, I think, in general, just to be able to get that in and working for everything. Because like you said, those 5700 XTs are kind of what's going now, AMD wise, and probably the majority that are getting into AMD, that's where they're starting at or jumping in. It's a good price point, good sweet spot. So yeah, having that support out of the box is a must, I think, at this point. All right, guys. So you've all been on this for 2 weeks. You've lived with it. You've worked with it. You've been beating it up. Leo's been trying to find things wrong with it, but he can't. Oh, wait, no. Yep, he's probably going to have plenty.
Oh, you give me some time, man.
Well, now is your time. What did you think of popOS 2004 LTS?
To be honest, it's pretty fantastic. There are things wrong with it, obviously, but I mean, there are things
How
wrong with
dare
every
you?
single.
What?
Wait, I didn't find nothing wrong with it.
Wait a minute. There are things wrong with every distro that I've ever tried. You know, I mean, and some of them are little paper cut things. So to kind of give you an idea of where I'm coming from with this, and honestly, this is going to be like this is a wrong thing, this is a great thing, this is a not so good thing, this is an awesome thing. So I'm not just trying to trash all over popOS, because to be honest with you, you might be surprised by the end of all of this when we get our temperatures on pop. So on my desktop, I did this on both my desktop and my laptop because I wanted to do this right. I wanted to know from every angle that I possibly could, all the hardware that I'm on, I wanted to do it right. So on my desktop, I'm on an MSI B350 Tomahawk Plus. So it's just an MSI motherboard with a Ryzen 1700. an RX 5700 XT graphics card, 32 gigs of RAM, and a 1440p display. That's important because as you want to start doing scaling and stuff, it makes a difference. And then my laptop, your pretty bog standard ThinkPad. It's a T450S i5 5300U, so it's on the slower side of laptop CPUs, as we were talking about before the show. And 1080p display. I'm not using it now, but I have an external 1080p display that worked fantastic. So my first thoughts, it's Ubuntu, but with a ton of additional and I think good tweaks. We were talking about the notification stuff in the top right-hand corner. It's important that I have that stuff. And it's just default. It's just there in POP. So that was really important. I didn't install on my desktop through BIOS, so the old legacy style of installation. And on my laptop, I did UEFI, just so I could feel both. You know what? POP is absolutely 100% intuitive when it comes to installing. You said it was good for new users. I agree with that, because right at the very beginning, unless you're buying a System 76 laptop, POP is not coming installed. So you're going to have to go through this process. And in both processes, BIOS, it didn't even ask me where my bootloader wanted to go. And I'm like, this is bad. Oh no. I rebooted, bingo, it worked. So the disk that I picked to install it on, it just dropped the bootloader right there. And I've had installers where that did not happen. So it's an intuitive thing. UEFI, again, one of those things where it was like, it didn't ask me where my EFI bootloader thing wanted to go. And I was just like, what's going to happen? It worked. Did not even have a single hitch with that.
Yeah, to that point too, with the UEFI stuff, absolutely. And that's, we talked about earlier in the show, what drew me in. Being able to load up a distro, and even back when I first got on it, it was one of the ones where you launched it and I could go start gaming. Like I didn't have to just futz with a bunch of stuff, to get things to work. It just felt like a complete operating system, like somebody really, it wasn't a bunch of stuff stacked together, but somebody had some real fluid thought and thought, you know what, here's our user base. Here's the next step they're going to do. And here's the next step they're going to do, and really walked through that to make it nice. And as the installation shows, and I think that's to the point, even there, right? It wasn't, it worked fine UEFI, but the BIOS, it just didn't. No. They've got it both ways. So that's really good feedback on that.
And the installer itself is beautiful. So it's not your typical Ubuntu installer. They've packaged it for popOS with all of the logos and imagery, and the questions that it asks are in a readable form for new users.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody would be confused and not know what to do in this installer. They ask you what they need, and then you boot into the system, and then you do the onboarding.
Yeah, I think the only person that would be confused is someone that has never installed an operating system before and is very foggy on, well, what's a disk? What's, how much RAM do I have? I don't even know the answer to that question. So certainly a segment of people that might be confused. But by and large, I agree with you there. I mean, it's if you know a little bit about computers, you won't have any issue getting through it. And
you would think most people getting on Linux know a little bit about computers, just a little.
Having that two-part installer makes it easier for them to ship, the hardware already installed with the operating system, so that you can boot into it in OEM mode, and then finish the rest of the installation, and then it's yours.
Yeah, we can thank GNOME for that. That's a GNOME thing, right? Where the initial install, then okay, yeah, I got it.
Yep.
Rocco, how'd you make out?
Well, I have I've been running POP for over a year now. So this was a pleasant thing to talk about. But I wanted to do the whole thing all over again, just like Leo said. I wanted to make sure I did it, installed it fresh. So what I did was I have the main machine, which is I recently upgraded from 1804 to 2004. Have the test machine that I did a fresh install on, and then I have a laptop that I upgraded. I will say that the main machine did not go well. And I don't know if we can blame POP for that. So you download the updates and you boot into this graphical user interface that they put together, and it goes through the update process. Halfway through, it decided to have an error, and then it just rebooted. I come back up to a black screen, and it was a nightmare. So Emma from System 76, I reached out to her, and she was helping me, and Popey was helping me because I didn't know where else to turn. I needed an expert, so I went
That
to
was
Popey.
hard mode.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, this is the main machine. This is not no test machine. I got to get work done on this. So long story short, we spent a couple hours on dependency issues that it was having with Python 2 and 3 and the switchover and all of this stuff. And we got it up and working. So that was fixed. Now the upgrade on the laptop, it went perfect. There were no issues. It downloaded, went into its thing, rebooted, and everything was fine. There are a few issues left over, I think, from the upgrade with the main machine. There are certain times where I'll boot up and it'll ask for your password, and it's not the 2004 password box. It's an older one, or it's a wide one. Sometimes it comes up and it's even a different theme. And I don't know what the deal is with that. But I think those are issues from being leftovers from that upgrade that went wrong. On the test machine, the install went perfect. We already talked about the installer. Now, the hardware that I'm running it on is pretty high-end hardware. You got i9 9900K processors, 32 gigabytes of RAM in both the main machine and the test machine. So that didn't have a problem. One was the test machine is an AMD card, 580, and the main machine is a 2080 NVIDIA. So I kind of covered all bases in that, the install, the hardware, and everything else. But, the big question, you'd mentioned, Joe, earlier when it first came out, that it was kind of just a theme. And I think that was the initial reaction by everybody, that this was just another reskinned Ubuntu, and we really didn't need this. And there was a lot of people questioning why. Why would you even put out a distro? Why don't you just put it back into the community itself? But I think they did a good thing by making this distro. And, you got standout features today that aren't everywhere else. Just like we talked about the tiling extension. That extension is awesome for people to get their feet wet in a tiling window manager without actually having to run a tiling window manager. Now, I don't know about you guys. I feel like I'm running Arch, dude. I have updates almost every single day in the popshop. Is it the same for you guys?
It is.
Yes.
Yeah. There was a big one this past week. I mean, a very large update, which I think it had to do with, it was in Ubuntu also. But yeah, every day I've got a number on my little pop shop down there, and I have to click it. I can't have any numbers down there. I have to click them,
right?
And I have to do the updates.
Oh, I go for the high score, man. I just let it.
You're going high score. But yeah, a lot of updates.
Going back to the original point of mine was that people said it was just an Ubuntu reskin. There are features today, and you still get that question. Why would you run popOS over Ubuntu? But there are so many different things. It's not one feature. It's not one thing that you can say, well, this is why you'd run popOS. It's the whole gamut of things. It's the pop shop. It's the theming that is so awesome throughout the system. Like there's no spots where, well, that doesn't quite look right. We talked about the extensions app. That is so cool that it's built in. When you pull it up, it shows you the installed manually extensions, and it separates them from the ones that are built in. And so what they put in and what you've put in.
I mean, let me add one to your list. This is one that I had no idea this existed. I got it on my laptop. I was just playing around, looking through some of the options that you get in the top right-hand corner. That's where everything is. Unless you're in the settings, that's where the stuff is. Laptop power profiles. When did this happen? Because going from, it's balanced by default. Going from there, where I would get 4 to 5 hours or so on my laptop, not doing anything too terribly heavy. Obviously, when you start, cracking open Google Chrome, it's like, you got 30 minutes, man. But when I move it from balanced to the battery saver one, it gave me an extra hour and a half. And I don't know what they're doing. I mean, I saw that the screen brightness went down a little bit, but I tapped it up just a little bit to make it a little bit brighter. But I still pulled out another hour. What is even going on there? So, just to add another one to your list, just little things that do not exist in Ubuntu, that do exist in popOS, that is another reason to say, you should, maybe because you're running on a laptop, you might want to try Pop, might squeeze some more juice out of it.
Yeah. And you know what, to that point too, what's so encouraging to me about this is obviously a lot of this is designed around their own hardware, right? Mm-hmm. Of course, I want to have a power saving mode for my own laptop that I just made, but they don't turn it off for the rest of us, right? All of those things that they're working on, these little niceties, it goes right out to everyone, and they support it. And they're not, they're not charging for the OS. I'm sure they'll take donations for it. They added that button this year, but yeah, I don't own a System 76 piece of hardware. I'd like to, but either way, they add those things in, and we reap the benefits. And it just feels, again, thought from the beginning to the end. They really thought about the user, how they were going to interact with it, and this would be nice for them. Oh, this would be nice for them. And we're reaping the benefits of it.
Well, one thing that I did find in the past couple days, they released a update, and one of the updates was the pop transition. That's what they're calling it. And basically it popped up a notification telling me that these are programs that are no longer going to be in the repos. And if you click it, it opens up a box and it tells you, hey, these are no longer going to be in the repos. There's a Flatpak available. It gives you an install button to install the Flatpak, and then it gives you a remove button to remove the deb so that you can get rid of it. They pretty much handled everything for you without having to go and jump through hoops. And I haven't heard much about it as far as like them releasing any notes about it or what exactly it was designed for. Like, why did they need to design something like that? But I think it's awesome.
I know what it was designed for. They support all their hardware and their customers. It saves a phone call. I mean, if you're supporting, right? If you're supporting a user base, all of us would do it. I mean, if I can save a phone call, every time I go to someone's desk in my office, I'm like, okay, you watch what I'm going to do right here. And you now know how to do this. You're the expert. And by them adding in these little tools, yeah, I mean, there's definitely a benefit on that side of it for sure. If it saves a phone call, if it's something they can handle in chat, or maybe they don't even have to chat with that individual, not because they don't want to, but if it relieves a pain point for their customer, amazing. Like that's incentive enough right there.
I agree completely, Joe. As somebody that, helps support software and IT support, I've been there. I know. You're right. You want to minimize those things as much as possible and give a good experience so that people are content and able to get their work done. I think all the value added features that System 76 puts into this are put this on the short list, if not towards the top.
Yep.
Yeah. So one of the other things that really jumped out at me, guys, was their website. Man, you go to System 76 website and it's not just that it looks like $1 million. It flows. If you need to find out, and this is also not just a distro, right? They sell hardware. They do a lot of things. But their support area is second to none. The pop docs, did you get into the pop docs? I mean, if I was on Ubuntu, I would come to the pop docs, or, no slight against Ubuntu. They do great too, but there's just a plethora of information that they've put it together from the user standpoint. Here's how you can do this. I mean, there was things in there I was reading. I had to double take. I'm like, wow, I could have used this when I was first getting into Linux. Where were you when I first started? But what else? What did you guys think of the website? What'd you find?
It is beautiful. I think the theming from, the operating system flows into the website, and it flows into the hardware even a little bit too. It all flows together very nicely and gives a really good experience.
Their designers are awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, they have an amazing eye for what looks good. So, I mean, yeah, definitely. Pops to them.
Well, it all goes back to the point I was trying to make about, it's the whole package of when you choose Pop. It's everything from all the features of it to the website, to the company behind it, the people that work at that company, and all of the time and effort they put into the community itself. And that's the reason why I run popOS.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we say a lot about Mac in general about, they're from top to bottom. It's Apple, software, hardware, everything. I mean, this is what System 76 is doing. It's what they're going for. It's the entire experience from the moment you hit their website to the moment you get their laptop to the moment you turn it on to the moment that you've made it yours. It's a consistent experience all the way down. And I think that says a lot about how much they care about what goes in and what doesn't go into the operating systems, the hardware, everything.
If you go to their About Us section, I clicked on every picture. The fact that they are putting themselves out here, we know what the World Wide Web is like, right? Guys,
oh, we know.
There's people, right? People do not want their picture out there. There's companies that they're like, I know if I put my stuff up here, somebody's going to find me and they're going to, because they ran into a problem but they seem to welcome that interaction, that they want to interact with their customer base because they feel confident in what they're putting out there. And that takes a lot of effort and a lot of work. As someone who runs a business that's very customer facing, interacting with your customers is great when everything's good, but wanting to interact with them even when it's bad and there's just no pacifying them, that's something else. But I thought the attention to that detail was really cool. And they who is System 76? A diverse team of creators, makers, and builders. A small company innovating the next big things. A group of extremely hardcore nerds. All of the above.
Yep.
And they had an A, B, C, D option there. And that's just very telling from the culture of the company there. And it's reflected all the way down through the desktop and into the distro.
So I got one more good thing to say, and then I can tell them how they can pacify me. So the thing that I realized was I've tried to play a H.264 video. So if you are familiar with codecs, so like your basic MP4, right? I play that videos, couldn't play it. It was like, nope. But the first thing that popped up was, hey, I see you're playing a video format that I don't understand. Do you want GStreamer 1.0-libav? And I'm like, I don't know what that is, but okay. And so I install it, and my video plays. And just, little attention to detail like that. I don't know if that's an Ubuntu thing. If it is, you guys are fantastic. I don't know if it's a popOS thing. If it is, you guys are fantastic. Either way, whoever does that, you're fantastic. Thank you for that. I didn't want to go digging around trying to find, I remember like years ago trying to find something codecs ugly, something or another. No, I'm not trying to do that again. But here's some things that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Number one, I had to go get Chromium, right? I had to. Because it was there and it wasn't blocked. So
I don't know anything about that.
I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Every distro I load up has got Chromium just right there available.
Just right there.
No empty packages.
Just click on it.
Yeah.
Nope.
So I go get Chromium and I get Chrome. So I installed them both. Chromium came in the deb that popOS builds, which Dan told me was the Debian packages. I didn't believe him. Then I fired it up. And then the bookmarks are like, hey, Debian.org. And I'm like, what? So that was kind of funny. But when that happened, when I fired it up, Debian.org, Debian's website is just a link, like a sea of blue links. That's what that is. When I looked at it, I was like, that does not look right. What is the deal? So I opened it up in Firefox, and there is a stark difference between what it looks like in Firefox and what it looks like in Chromium. And I'm not talking about the fonts. The font rendering is different, and the font choices are different. I get that between the two browsers. But the color, blue is blue. Like, it's supposed to be blue, not purple. So in both Chromium and Chrome, and I experienced this in Ubuntu too. So this is not something that popOS did wrong, but it is something that popOS might be able to fix because I had this on both my desktop and my laptop as well. I had to go in to the Chrome flags, and it was the force color profile option needed to be turned to sRGB, not default. If I left it at default, everything was purple. I mean, subtly purple, but almost is halfway in between a clicked link and a non-clicked link. But it's subtle enough that it kept nagging at me. And so I had to go in and figure out how to fix that. That's how you fix that, Chrome flags. But the fact that you have to go into that, very user not cool. There were seriously maybe 2 articles on the internet about this. This was not a very widespread issue, but I had it happen on both machines that are different. Maybe it's because I don't run on NVIDIA stuff. I'm on Intel here on my laptop, and I'm on AMD, an AMD graphics card on my desktop. Maybe NVIDIA makes this work, but these two situations did not work at all. So that was jarring, but like I said, I had it happen on Ubuntu too, so it's not really just a pop thing at all.
You showed us the screenshot in chat, and it was distinct enough that I would have thought that you had clicked all those links. So
Exactly. And I was really getting that vibe.
It's the same on NVIDIA, just so you know.
Oh,
because I'm looking. I have it loaded up on the XPS.
Yeah, do a side by side with Firefox.
A dark purple. Yeah.
And I don't know what that is, and I've seen that happened to me on Fedora. So this is not even just an Ubuntu thing either. This is whatever Chrome or Chromium is doing on, maybe it's GNOME, I don't know, but yeah, whatever's happening there, purple.
So there's this little company out there now. They've got this Chromium based web browser. I think it's Edge or something. Try that one.
Oh, a small company, right? They're like a startup.
Yeah, little guys. They're Kickstarter something. I don't know.
Really?
Edge. I think it is Edge. Maybe. I don't know if the guy from U2 was one of the founders. His name was Edge, I think. But
like
regardless, that. I've heard they've got some stuff to try there.
I wouldn't mind trying it out just to see if it does the same thing.
Yeah.
The other little thing that got me was I've got more. We'll talk about them later though. But the Slack indicator crashed my whole system on my desktop. And I know it was a Slack indicator because I journal control XE, went back, checked out the logs, and everything was going fine. And then a wall of yellow text and a chunk of red text, and it all started with Slack indicator cannot be found. And then hard lockup. And I'm, what happened there? So it's the indicator. I know we love our indicators up there, but whatever happened because of that extension. And I don't know if it's a GNOME thing. I don't know if it's whatever, but yeah, hard lockup. I didn't have any other issues outside of that as far as the indicators go, but it struck me as I haven't had a hard lockup in months. And then that happened to me, and I'm like, whoa, got to write this one down.
Was that on your Lenovo?
Oh, no. That was on my desktop.
Okay.
Yeah, that was 5700 XT, I guess. If it's a graphics thing, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a slowness thing.
Well, I think the one thing that if I could change, it would be to, like, as good as the installer is, if it could automatically recognize a high DPI screen, that would be awesome.
Oh, yeah.
The installer itself.
Yeah, all other distros have that feature where it pops up a box. Not Ubuntu, but we were trying one on Biddle the other week, I think it was, and it popped up a box and said, "Hey, I noticed you're running a high DPI screen. Would you like to scale it?" Sure, that was awesome. If they could build that in somehow to the Pop installer, that would be great.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Definitely, just have some options, right? Try them out right then and there. Check it out and see what you like.
Yeah, high DPI still seems to be an issue across the board.
Yeah, not even just Linux. I mean, Mac is probably maybe the best at it, but it's still not great.
No, there's some issues there too.
Oh, yeah, no, there are definitely issues. I have
you start working with external monitors on a Mac, it gets... Yeah, the two Macs I've got in here just drive me insane.
Quick side story. The only way to change the resolution on your Mac is to plug an external monitor into it that has a lower resolution. You can't just go in and change it anymore. That just annoys me to no end. But yeah, so I mean high DPI, it's not 100% there either, even when it just works.
Yeah. Well, my mom just got a 13-inch Air that's got I don't know, what is it, 5K screen, whatever it is on 13
something
inches.
Ridiculous, right?
And I'm trying to get it to where she can actually read it, and I'm going, you got to be kidding me. She's a 70-year-old woman trying to read this. Yeah. Everybody's still struggling with high DPI a little bit here and there, I think.
Yeah. So, Linux gets a pass on that because not even the company that's supposedly, that's supposed to do it right does it right.
Well, you're holding it wrong.
Oh, of course. Oh, I remember that. So I got to leave you with one more if nobody's going to, stop me from doing this.
Go for it, Leo.
You got to have one guy that's just absolutely crazy critical about something, right? And
we need it.
I've been elected dually to do this. So, Telegram. I don't know if this is a GNOME thing, But I installed Telegram both in Flatpak in the Pop Shop, and my preferred way to do that is just to go to Telegram, download it, and then just drop it all in the bin folder. Just do it manually. But it shows up in the app indicators, and it shows up in the applications and stuff after log out, login. So it doesn't bother me. But in both ways, when I've got 20, 30 messages or something that I need to scroll through, if I have Telegram focused and I'm scrolling, everything stutters. The whole desktop stutters. This happens on both my laptop and my desktop. And it just I'll have a YouTube video going that, is very smooth, is the 60 frames video or something. So, you can tell when stuff happens. I'm scrolling and that video will stutter. Other things that are graphically heavy will stutter.
I am really glad you brought this up, Leo, because I had the exact same experience, and I thought it was just me. I thought it was my hardware. I was like,
it is not. What are you on graphically?
So it's on AMD. I'm actually using a dock. So I have a Dell laptop, and it has a dock, and it's AMD graphics. I'm not sure what version it is or whatever, but it's definitely using an AMD chip. And yeah, no, it was really, really slow. And then all of a sudden it would take off, and I'd be like, that must be, it must be the graphics driver or something. And so I'd go do something else, and I'd surf the web, and I'd scroll up and down. I'm like, no, it's working fine. But
yeah,
then I'd come back to Telegram, and there it is. So
yeah, so you two on your NVIDIA stuffs need to try this out and see if maybe it's the Mesa thing.
I tried it out, and I didn't have any problems on any of the 3 machines.
Yeah.
Now we're talking new messages, right? Not ones that you've already scrolled through. Because if you've scrolled through them, it works.
I'm going to jump into
new messages.
This one. It's 276 messages here.
Focus it, scroll it, and then just watch what's going on in your screen. Move your mouse around, whatever, see if it stutters at all.
Okay, I had a little stutter going down there.
Okay.
A little stutter.
Uh-huh.
But it didn't lock anything else up. Just a little stutter as it was loading the messages.
It didn't lock anything else up, but it would it would be kind of herky-jerky, if you will.
I got you.
Exactly.
And that's on the Flatpak. I'm using the Flatpak.
Can we submit a bug like that? Can we just say it's herky-jerky on the desktop, and I need that to be a little bit better.
It's a very technical term.
I have the test machine that has an AMD card, and this desktop has the NVIDIA card. I tried it on both, and I get no stutter whatsoever.
And this one I'm on AMD, actually. This workstation, I'm on AMD, and the other one I'm on is NVIDIA. So
whatever this issue is, I feel like it deserves more testing, because this does not happen to me on Mint, and I'm not trying to bring that in here or anything like that.
Right.
But I mean, it does not happen to me there. So it's got to be something with, I don't know, GNOME or I don't know.
Is it possible that Mint uses a different version of Telegram?
No, because I grab it the same way there too. I grab it manually, so has nothing to do with Mint. But they do offer you the Flatpak version.
Yeah. I use the Flatpak, so I mean that's going to be the same everywhere.
Exactly, and so Mint is the same way, where they'll offer you a Flatpak or nothing.
So what you're saying is you just hate snaps. That's your problem, right?
No, this is not a snap. I had it in Flatpak. I mean, I can't say I'm in love with it.
I'd totally use that.
I installed them
if it was available.
I do have some.
did you try out the Snap on Mint? How'd that one go?
Wow.
Actually,
Shots
not
fired.
bad.
Shots fired.
I did actually put Chromium in via Snap, just to see it. You know what? The mouse is ugly. I can't stand it.
Yes, that is the biggest drawback with snaps.
I will say you're the only person I've heard to complain about a Debian Chrome package, and you were like, the color's off. It's because it's Debian based. They're a little behind, so it's 16 colors now. So we're waiting for them to get to
32.
32. Maybe we'll get up to 64-bit. I don't know. They're working on it. They're working.
That's
on
totally
it.
it.
Yeah, we're 1 year into the next 10-year cycle of the next release. So just go easy on the guys. They're working.
It'll happen. Debian, 11 will happen in about 20 years. So one last thing that it's not. None of this stuff was actually a deal breaker though. None of it. I like it, man. Pop is really good. So the last thing was, does this happen to you guys when you install software, especially a Flatpak? You install it and now the icon just turns into an X.
No.
So it happens on both my desktops. or both my machines. I'll install. I'll send you guys a screenshot about this because it's weird. I'll install something and the icon will be there the whole time, and then all of a sudden, poof, the icon's just a red X now.
What?
The icon where?
In the pop shop.
Really?
Yeah, so I go into the pop shop, go find me a piece of software, install that software, and after the software is installed, not during, not before, but only after it's installed, the icon just flips to an X. And then I reload the page, everything's back. But that was just weird to me.
You're having
He's making all this up.
You're having some weird
He's
issues,
making it
Leo.
up.
Did you steal my hardware somewhere along the line? Because I'm usually the guy with problems.
2 separate downloads of the ISO. I downloaded the ISO on my laptop, put it on a drive, downloaded the ISO on my desktop, put it on a drive. Yeah, so I don't even know that it would be the install disk or anything like that.
Yeah, you're making it all up. I think at
totally.
this point
100%.
you're trying
100%.
to dirty their clean and wholesome name, and I'm not going to allow it. I'm not going to allow it, Leo. How's
It's too late. It's already
I think
been
you're
recorded.
completely stealing Rocco's thunder here.
All right, fellas, we've been talking for a while now about popOS, so it's the moment of truth. What are we going to do with this? Is this you going to continue rolling with this distro, or is it nuke and pave time? Let's start with you, Leo.
I'm gonna keep it. I talked a lot of mess about these little small things, but I spent a lot of time talking about them. But it was because it was the only stuff I could find wrong. Everything else is fantastic. One issue that I have with Ubuntu is that you hit the super key and all the windows pop out. It was, to steal another term, herky jerky on Ubuntu proper, but on popOS, smooth. Something
Butter.
they do. And if you haven't noticed, little things get to me. They tend to just crop up in my brain and I can't let them go. And when it happens and it happens and it happens and it happens, it slowly eats away at me to push me away and push me away. But I mean, none of those things were deal breakers for me in any way whatsoever. So I want to stay with it. It's actually really, really good.
That's the most surprising thing I've heard in quite some time. Not what I was expecting at all. All right, Dan, what did you think? You keeping it?
I'm gonna put this in the toolbox. I'm gonna keep it for some other people, probably not me though. So I'm not keeping it. I think it's a very, very solid distro. It still has a little too much flash for me. Okay.
You just
Shocker.
don't like Flash, Dan.
I don't.
He's a simple man.
I don't. You talk about the application menu and how it all pops out there. Ah, man, I just can't
We can
stand
see
that.
if we can get it in black and white. Would that?
No.
Would that?
Color's cool. I like color. Yeah, but I don't know. Icons flying all over my screen. No, stop that. Yeah, so put those down.
Yeah, that is a little much. They all fly out. I got a very Android feel when I click buttons in the application launcher and stuff. So I totally feel you there.
And I could probably get past it, but if I'm really going to make this my own, I'm not going to keep that. So I think it's very solid. I think all the value-added things are excellent. They're good choices. And the pop shop is great. The selection for Flatpak versus Deb, that's fantastic. I love all those things. And I think it's great for, any user, not just a new user, any user, like you said. So I think it's something to keep in the toolbox for other people, but maybe not for me.
Okay. All right. That's an honest answer. I'll take it. Rocco?
Okay, so I'm a popOS fanboy. Everybody knows that. I'm going to continue running it. It has so many awesome features from PopShop to the extensions thing they just added to the tiling. And you go along and you add all of the company behind it and the community that they interact with and everything that goes on inside the System 76 ecosystem is something that I want to support. I want to support a movement like that. And I love popOS. So yes, it's going to stay.
What a surprise.
Yeah, shocker.
Yeah.
I'm gonna nuke and pave all my. No, that's not gonna happen. No, it's great. I've been on Pop for a while. It's my go-to. I love playing in all the other worlds, and I will continue to do so. But every time I do, it doesn't matter. Manjaro. I've done. I'm playing with Mint right now. all of the other ones, Mate, Ubuntu Mate, I still end up back at Pop, and that's where my home is. And it's solid. I feel like it's got enough of the current to keep me going, enough of the little tweaks that just make it that much more usable. It's what I have my children on. I have 2 Lenovo T440s that the kids game on and play on, and they love it. And they love the color schemes. I think so much thought goes into it. And like Rocco, I do support what they seem to be about, and that ecosystem there. And I feel like they're just somebody I want to continue to support. And by using their distro, I feel like I'm doing that and giving them feedback. It's not without its problems. This is operating systems in general, I think, all have problems. And it doesn't matter where you're at. You're going to run into issues from time to time. I run into them from time to time. Rocco, you talked about your upgrade woes. 2 T440s, 1 failed, 1 went through. I mean, they are as identical hardware as possible, and they all have the same programs on them. 1 failed, 1 went fine. Go figure. But that's just part of life, and it's not a deal breaker for me. I think this is a very consistent, awesome product, and I love it, and I'm glad to be here with it.
Housekeeping. We want to hear from you. Send your questions and feedback to contact@linuxuserspace.show, and we hope to read and discuss your message in an upcoming episode. In this show, we like to point out the fact that the Linux community has some fantastic members. And our podcast showcase this week is Linux Headlines from Jupiter Broadcasting. In under 3 minutes, you can get Linux and open source headlines every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. More info at linuxheadlines.show. If you like what you hear on this show, please consider sponsoring us on Patreon. Head on over to patreon.com/linuxuserspace. That's patreon.com/linuxuserspace, all one word. Please follow us on Twitter @linuxuserspace to get all the latest announcements for this show and highlights for things that impact your user space. Lastly, don't forget to rate this podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast application, and like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. You can always get more information at our website, linuxuserspace.show.
All right, so public service announcement for you guys. Ubuntu 19.10 is going to reach end of life in just 4 days. So if you have any machines running 19.10, you definitely need to do the upgrade now, or at least plan it out how you're going to upgrade your system from 19.10. I mean, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, I don't think there's many people running 19.10, but it's still definitely something that we need to put out there as a PSA.
Yeah, as far as stats go, I think 1910 is pretty low on the install number chart. But yeah, there's certainly people out there doing it. So upgrade.
Right?
Yeah, 2004, pave forward.
And if you never want to do it again, you got 5 years on 2004.
Yeah, 2004 is a LTS, so.
All right, so I wanted to bring up Linux hardware, and we talk about it all the time. Every Linux Spotlight episode I make, I ask the person, hey, is this the year of the Linux desktop? You know, same old, age-old question. But I think we don't realize how much hardware there is available to purchase out there. There are so many companies nowadays offering Linux pre-installed that we hear it all the time. Yes, we hear it, but we don't actually realize how much it is. And I went out and wrote some of these companies down, and we're going to go over some of them. Obviously, we just talked about System 76. They just came out with their Lemur Pro. They got a fantastic line of computers. Along with System 76, you got companies like Tuxedo. They are based in the UK, but they ship to most countries out there. I think there's only 1 or 2 countries on the list that they don't ship to. You have Juno Computers. They have many lines of computers that you can pick from to custom build your computer. We just read about Lenovo, that they will sell Ubuntu on their ThinkPad P series and their Workstation series of computers. I'm currently testing out a Ubuntu Focus. And if you're a developer or you're looking for a high-end laptop, this is one amazing laptop. It has everything you need as far as specs are concerned. It has high-end software, high-end hardware, but it also has the workflows that come pre-installed on the laptop when you order it, for whether you're into video or audio editing, or if you're into machine learning, or there are so many different things available from it that it makes it not a laptop for everybody, but it fills that void, or it fills a niche that the people that out there that need those powerful laptops like that, they can get them, and they can come pre-installed with a workflow that fits you. So Dell, it used to be that you had to go to their blog in order to see Linux machines. Now you can just go to dell.com/Linux and you can see the machines they offer with Linux on it. We just read about Elementary having being pre-installed on Star Labs. Well, Star Labs offers so many different distros on there: Ubuntu, Linux Mint, Kubuntu, and on down the list. MX, we just talked to Dolphin on Biddle. MX now comes pre-installed on Star Labs laptops. So you can get the Star Labs Mark IV, and that comes, you can get it pre-installed with MX Linux. You have Purism. Once you write all of these down and you see all of this whole list, it is an exciting time to be in Linux. What do you guys think?
I had no idea that the list was this long until you wrote it down, and now I'm reading it over. I had no idea. I think it's fantastic. It really is.
I think we had it wrong the whole time. It'll never be the year of the Linux desktop. It's the year of the Linux laptop.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, can you imagine at what point in the last, I don't know, however long, we just talked about how long we've all been dealing with computers or Linux in general. What did you think you'd see this day and then still not be satisfied?
Well, that's the thing. You have so many options now that you can get whatever you want basically in a laptop or a computer and have Linux pre-installed on it.
It's a fun time. It feels like we're on the cusp of more to come, right? The changes that have happened, it feels like in the last couple of years to the Linux desktop has been far more change than happened in the previous 5 or the previous 10 years. It seems like it's changing at such a rapid pace, and the adoption seems to be rising up. And some of the people we get in Telegram, it feels like every day you pop in Telegram and someone's like, yeah, I just got on Linux yesterday and I'm checking it out and I need some help with this or whatever. And we think back to the problems we used to have when, you fire it up and
your Wi-Fi didn't work.
Yeah.
Gosh, Wi-Fi was such a nightmare on all of them. It felt like things have just changed so much, and this is just awesome information. And even some of these are smaller companies, right? They're not all. I mean, yeah, Dell, Lenovo, that's big. That's big time. Those are big, major companies. But some of these other ones, they're smaller companies. That's awesome. They're paving the way. They're adding more devices, and I think it's fascinating. This is fun. This is a fun time to be in Linux.
I think one of the other great things is there's something for every budget here. It's not just high-end machines, and it's not just cheap little netbooks. It's something that encompasses the whole range, and you can get exactly what you want with the Linux already installed.
Yep. Well, I didn't even put on the list Pinebook or Pine because there's another one that offers it. And I think to your point, Joe, we've seen so much change in the last year or so. I think that lends itself to us not realizing how much change, because every other month you're seeing some, like Manjaro comes out and says, hey, we have Manjaro on these laptops now. And then Elementary comes out, and then MX comes out. And it's like, it's such a constant change that you don't realize how much is actually changing until you actually see it written down on paper.
Yeah, it's like erosion, right? I mean, it happens so slowly, at least in parts. That, when you really take a hard look at it, you realize, I've got a dozen options here. And looking at the Star Labs Mark IV, starts at $736. That's one of my hard limits. I I won't spend 4 digits on a laptop no matter what I'm getting. I can't do it. I just can't find it in the budget. So this is something that I'm going to have a really hard time saying, well, should I get a refurbished ThinkPad? Because, I mean, that's my go-to right now. Or should I just get a Star Labs?
And you can take your pick on whatever distro that you want to get installed on it. At one point, I don't know if we even envisioned that. I don't think we envisioned being able to buy a laptop or a desktop computer and say, hey, I want this pre-installed. We just figured we would get our own.
The conversation was always, how hard is it to turn off, what is it, the boot things?
Secure boot.
Secure boot, yeah. How hard is it to turn off Secure Boot so that you can get Linux on there after the fact? That was always the conversation. Never Linux comes on it.
Right. Yeah, you did more of your research on a Linux laptop before it was a Linux laptop because you needed to make sure all the hardware was going to work.
Yeah, you did your research on a Windows laptop to how to change that.
Yeah, exactly. That's
one.
what I mean. This was a pre Linux laptop. We were going to make it one.
It was either that or you're scrambling on your phone, right?
Right.
It's too late. Wi-Fi already doesn't work.
Wi-Fi doesn't work, and there's not a Cat 5 cable in the vicinity. But thinking about the fact with all those options, what that does say, I think, is that the Linux desktop has gotten to a place in a very wide, broad capacity where stuff just works, right? We just spent a while picking through popOS. We're going to go through all manner of distributions out there, and there's some amazing ones. And like Leo, you struggle to find things. They're nitpicky things that you're just like, I don't like the way the blue text is on my Debian Chrome browser, whatever. Like, but you find these little things. That's an awesome point. When we're at that point with a Linux desktop, when our big problems used to be, I can't boot. I can't communicate with the world. I have a laptop that doesn't talk to the internet anymore. Those were the problems we were, at least that I was facing when I first started.
I'm very familiar. You type in Start X and you cross your fingers and you hope you got a graphical desktop there.
And then it wasn't in widescreen either.
Yeah.
In Biddle, we've talked about a couple of distros lately that children are putting together.
I know.
Right? These young, very talented young men and women are working on these things. And we're not even running into the issues we used to run into with major distributions out there. So it just tells me that the quality that we're dealing with on the Linux desktop has risen to a really, really wonderful place to be at.
We're in a good place.
But I also think the quality of the laptops that you can buy have gotten so much better in the Linux realm. I mean, when you look at like the Lemur Pro and you can get ridiculous numbers of battery life, 14 hours, and some, say that you can even get more than that. When you can do those kind of things, and that is because of the work from System 76 that they put back into it. We are in exciting times.
Yeah, it's funny. And there are still pain points. I think of some of the things Jason Evangelos talked about lately about Linux being a first-class citizen, so to speak, especially when it comes to like NVIDIA and AMD drivers and some of the software. There's some really neat little utilities that are made for Windows that just aren't available for Linux when it comes to video cards and gaming and whatnot. Yeah, there's still mountains to climb, and there always will be.
There always will be, dude.
Yeah, that's not. But it's great that we can focus on those mountains now and not just will it boot. Like those are amazing things that we can look at, and we can start demanding. Right, we can start saying, hey, it's not good enough that you're throwing this in the kernel, or it's not good enough that we've figured out these drivers. We want to be first-class citizens too, and that is again. I'll say it again. It is a fun time to be in Linux. Yeah, no Windows 8 here. Not doing it.
This is App Focus, where we focus on the app. In this episode, I want to talk to you about Bashtop. If you like to be in the terminal, this is going to be an application that you want to add to your tool chain. You are probably familiar, if you're a terminal junkie like me, with Top or HTOP, and they're just software utilities to allow you to see what your system is doing in real time. Bashtop takes that 12 steps further. You want it to look nice. HTOP's got a little bit of that, but Not like Bashtop. You want to know what your disks are doing? Bashtop has you. You want to know what your network card is doing? Bashtop has you. You want to know the list of applications that you have running on your system? Bashtop has you there too. CPUs, individually, temperatures, got it. Everything that's going on right now on your system, Bashtop's going to tell you what that is. On top of that, it looks nice. No more of this text-only kind of stuff. Sure, it's ASCII art, but pretty ASCII art. I grew up in the 90s, so if you remember anything about that time, you remember there was ASCII art. So what do you guys think about Bashtop? I know I convinced each one of you to at least turn it on. So, Joe, what do you think?
I haven't turned it off. I've left this up and running. I love it. Actually, it came in handy this week. If you guys haven't noticed, my fans are so quiet on my machine now. I went into the BIOS and tweaked a bunch of settings, but I was worried that after I lowered the fans, the curve there, that I was going to get some heat. And so I was like, Leo said, look at Bashtop. So I was in Bashtop the whole time, and I've been watching my temperatures on all the cores. I love it. It's color. I like that it's in the terminal. I can just open another screen next to it and do whatever I'm doing there and then bounce right back over. But it doesn't feel like your typical terminal app. Like, it just feels a little more robust, and it just looks a lot nicer. So yeah, man, this is my new hotness right here. I'm keeping it.
I had mentioned earlier in the show that I'm getting used to workspaces. This is how I did it. I drug Bashtop down to workspace number 2, full screened it, and every time I hit the super key, I get a preview. And if I want to zoom into it, like, I click on that workspace. I get down to that, and I can actually take a look at what's going on. So it's like, it's just in the background all the time. Dan, what did you think?
So this is the kind of bling that I can get behind right here. I love it. This
It's
is great.
not too much for you, Dan?
Nope, this is great. It's in my terminal.
It's like 8 colors.
ASCII. Yeah. I can handle this. This
might
fantastic.
even be 16 colors.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, it might be.
It gives me all the information that I want right there at my fingertips, and I love that because that's the sort of thing that I can geek out on and just get behind. So I love this thing, and I'm going to install it everywhere.
Nice. Rocco, we had a conversation about getting Bashtop working, and I learned something. I couldn't believe it. You don't do PPAs, at least not on your main machine here.
So for years, dude, I did PPAs, and I screwed up my machine so many times, pulling PPAs out and, putting some in that didn't work, that hadn't been upgraded to the latest version of Ubuntu. So at some point, I don't remember exactly when, but I just said, you know what? I'm done with PPAs. I'm not putting any on the machine. If it ain't somewhere where I can have it readily by just installing it, then I don't need it.
I don't blame you.
When you first mentioned it to us, you said, well, you have to install a PPA. And I'm like, nope, not doing it.
But Dan saves the day.
So actually, I didn't save the day. I didn't make the snap, but I found out that there is a snap, and I had to mention that, and then Rocco was able to install it.
Yep. So that's what I did. I installed it by Snap, and there is 2 extra commands I guess you got to run for the Snap.
Yep.
But it is a great program to see all of the stuff that you have on your system. And yes, HTOP does similar things to it, but this is one of those programs that just takes it a step above something like HTOP and gives you more information in a nice view, basically. So yes, I'm going to be installing this on all of my machines now that it's a Snap.
Very cool. So I think, doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter how you like to install your software. If you like to compile from source, this is my preferred way. I'll just, git clone this thing and a sudo make install. That's all you got to do. There are a couple other packages that you need if you're going to be doing it that way. You need to have the sysstat package as well as the LM sensors package installed. This allows you to check out your temperatures, and it allows you to look at disk activity as well. So I know I'm going to stay with it. The historical view is a killer feature. This is something that HTOP doesn't give you, right? HTOP, it gives you those nice bars going back and forth, but what happened 30 seconds ago? That is something that is really important to me as far as, just kind of in a logging idea. So Bashtop is going to give that to you, and you can kind of adjust how fast it goes across the screen. So you can have 30 minutes, an hour of historical data to go back through if that's what you want. So I'm keeping it. Joe, you said you're keeping it. Dan, you seemed like you were keeping
Loving it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely keeping it.
And Rocco, keeping it?
Keeping it.
So to recap, install it however you want. Install it via compilation, install it from the PPA, or install it from the snap. Now, it looks like the snap may need a little bit of work before you get things like temperatures in there. But as far as the PPA and compiling it yourself goes, as long as LM sensors and sysdata is in there, it'll work.
Well, that's going to wrap up our first episode of Linux User Space. And I want to take a moment and I want to thank you for listening and for your support. Joe, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at JojoFett.
Leo?
You can find me on Twitter as well at Leo Chavez or leochavez.org.
Dan?
You can find me on Twitter at KC2BEZ.
And you can find me at Big Daddy Linux. Join us in 2 weeks when we return to the Linux User Space.